The scent of bleach burned through the hallway air before anyone even screamed. Lockers slammed. Laughter echoed. And on the polished floor of Jefferson High, a young black girl named Amara knelt frozen, her dark curls dripping white. The liquid hissed as it touched her skin, not from heat, but from humiliation. Guess that'll teach you to think you're better than us. One of the bullies sneered, a plastic bottle dangling from her hand. The others laughed, not the kind of laughter that fills a room, the kind that cuts straight through someone's spirit. For a few seconds, the hallway went silent. Phones were already out. Someone whispered, "Is that bleach?" Amara didn't move. She could smell it, the chemical sting mixing with the faint vanilla scent of her conditioner. She had spent hours that morning twisting those curls, proud of how they framed her face. Now they clung to her cheeks, ruined. One drop of bleach fell onto her hand, leaving a pale spot that burned like fire. And still, she didn't cry. Not a single tear. The bullies wanted her to break. That's what made it fun. But Amara just stared at them. Eyes steady. Breathing slow. It wasn't silence from fear. It was focus. "You think you can just walk around here like you're special?" One girl spat, her voice trembling with a mix of cruelty and insecurity. "Say something." Amara's lips parted slightly, but no words came. She simply tilted her head the faintest motion, as if she were studying them, measuring behind her calm. Her mind replayed every word her sensei had ever said. Control begins with breath. Power begins with restraint. The bullies didn't notice her fists, how relaxed they were, how steady her shoulders stayed. They didn't know that beneath that soaked uniform was a body trained in precision, discipline, and strength, because Amara wasn't just another quiet girl at school. She was something else entirely. And when they poured that bleach on her, they didn't just ruin her hair. They awakened something they weren't ready to face, but they had no idea who she really was. Before Jefferson High, before the whispers and stares, Amara's world was much smaller and much simpler. She grew up in a modest apartment above her mother's beauty salon on the south side of town. The kind of place where the walls carried the sound of laughter, gossip, gospel music, and the sweet smell of hair oils. Her mother, Denise, worked long hours but always found time to braid Amara's hair at night. Fingers weaving not just curls but confidence. "Your hair is your crown," she used to say. "They might try to make you hate it, but you wear it like royalty." Amara had believed that. She always did, until the day they made her doubt it. At school, she was quiet, but not timid. The kind of student teachers loved, disciplined, respectful, always early, always prepared. She carried herself with the calm of someone who saw more than she said. That calm came from years spent in the dimly lit dojo, 2 blocks from home. The one with the cracked mirrors and the sound of steady breathing behind the paper walls. Her mother had enrolled her there when she was 9, after Amara got into her first and only fight in elementary school. Some boys had mocked her dark skin, saying it looked like burnt toast. She'd shoved one of them hard enough to make him fall. The principal called it aggression. Her mother called it pain. That night, instead of punishment, Denise took her hand and walked her into the dojo. Strength, her mother told her, isn't in how hard you hit back. It's in how strong you stay when you don't. That was the night she met Sensei Ito, an old Japanese instructor who barely smiled but somehow saw through her silence. His first words to her were not about fighting, but about control. "You cannot master a punch," he said, "until you master your breath." Years later, Amara still practiced that lesson daily. Early mornings, while the city yawned awake, she would stretch in the narrow alley behind the salon, her movements quiet, precise. Each motion was like a whisper between her and her discipline. Her neighbors often mistook it for dance, not knowing each graceful turn was a technique sharpened by patience. At school, though, she kept that side of herself hidden. The dojo was her sanctuary, not her status symbol. She never bragged, never posted photos. In a world that judged by looks and labels, Amara preferred mystery. But the mystery also made her a target. To some girls, her calm confidence looked like arrogance. To others, her silence felt like judgment. When she walked past the bullies in the hallway, makeup perfect, loud, always laughing, They saw a girl who didn't care to belong. And maybe she didn't. Amara didn't chase their approval. She had her own rhythm, her own world. But that independence, that quiet pride, made her a mirror they couldn't stand to look into. Still, she wasn't bitter. Even after the bleach, even after the humiliation, a part of her still tried to understand. She knew people hurt others to hide their own pain. Her sensei once told her, weakness often wears the mask of cruelty. At home that night, after washing her hair 3 times and watching strands fall into the sink, Amara stared at her reflection. The curls were lighter now, uneven, damaged, but her eyes were still the same, dark, focused, unbroken. Her mother stood behind her, silent at first. Then she whispered, "Baby, you don't have to go back there. Not after what they did." But Amara shook her head. "If I don't," she said softly, "they win." That's who she was, not vengeful, but unyielding. She believed strength wasn't about striking back, but standing tall. Every scar, every insult, was just another layer of armor. As she wrapped her hair that night, she caught a glimpse of her old karate medal on the dresser. Small, bronze, a relic from a city tournament she'd won years ago. She picked it up, feeling the cool metal against her palm. It wasn't the victory she remembered most. It was the moment before the fight began. The silence in her chest, the calm before movement. That same calm was returning now. Tomorrow, she would walk back into Jefferson High. She wouldn't hide her hair, her pain, or her pride. She would walk through those halls like a storm that didn't need thunder to be felt. Because Amara wasn't done, not yet. And though no one at that school knew it, every breath she took from that moment on was a countdown, not to revenge, but to revelation. Something was building. Something the bullies would never see coming. The next morning, the sun rose, pale and uncertain. Hidden behind a thin layer of gray clouds, the kind of morning that felt like the world was holding its breath, Amara stood in front of her mirror, tying her shoelaces with deliberate calm. Her hair, though still scarred from the bleach, had been braided back neatly. No headscarf. No hoodie. No attempt to hide. Her mother watched from the doorway, a coffee mug trembling slightly in her hands. "You sure about this?" Denise asked. Amara nodded. "They need to see me stand." Her mother sighed, proud, afraid, and silent all at once. "Then make them see your strength, not your anger." By the time Amara reached Jefferson High, the whispers had already begun. Phones had done their job overnight. The video of the Bleach attack had spread across school group chats like wildfire. She heard it before she saw it. The sound of her name whispered behind hands. The occasional snicker. That's her. The Bleach girl. Amara's steps never faltered. She walked straight down the main hallway, past lockers that suddenly grew silent when she passed. The Bullies' 3 girls, all part of the same glittering clique, were huddled near the cafeteria doors. Their leader, Madison, wore her hair in a high ponytail so tight it looked painful. Her smile was the kind that never reached her eyes. When she spotted Amara, she smirked. "Well, look who's back." "Didn't expect you to show your face." Amara's eyes met hers briefly. "Guess you don't know me that well." The other girls, Chloe and Brianna, exchanged uneasy glances. They hadn't expected her to talk back. Madison, though, didn't flinch. "You think you're brave or something? Coming back after that?" Amara shrugged. "No, just not afraid." Madison's grin faltered for a heartbeat. That flicker of insecurity, gone as quickly as it appeared, was all Amara needed to see. Then she walked past them, leaving Madison's laughter echoing weakly behind her in the cafeteria. Conversation stopped as soon as she entered. The Bleach incident had given everyone a story to tell, and in that story, Amara had been the victim. But the way she carried herself that morning, chin up, step steady, didn't fit the role. She grabbed a tray, picked up a small carton of milk, and sat down at her usual table, alone. From across the room, Madison watched. "She's really pretending like nothing happened." Chloe hesitated. "Maybe we went too far." Madison cut her off. "Don't start that." Her voice hardened, the mask of confidence cracking just enough to reveal something deeper, fear of losing control. She wants people to pity her. That's her thing now. But we're not going to let her play hero. The next few days turned into a quiet war. Small things at first: whispers, giggles, a shove in the hallway that was an accident. A nasty note slipped into her locker. "Bleach looks good on you." Amara ignored them all. Her silence frustrated Madison. Every bully feeds on reaction, and Amara gave her none, until one afternoon in the locker room. Amara had just finished gym class and was sitting on the bench, towel draped over her shoulders. Her earbuds played soft lo-fi music, the kind that always helped her center herself before heading home. Madison and her crew entered, his voices high and sharp. They talked loud enough for her to hear. "Did you see her hair? Looks like straw," Chloe said, laughing nervously. Madison chimed in, "You can't fix trash with conditioner." Amara didn't turn. She took a deep breath, steadying her heartbeat. Then Madison walked closer, her footsteps deliberate. "Hey, Bleach girl, got something to say?" Amara looked up slowly. Her eyes were calm to calm. "You still need attention that bad?" Madison froze. The words weren't shouted, just quietly devastating. The kind of truth that lands heavier than any insult. Chloe looked uneasy. "Let's just go, Mads." But Madison's pride was a fragile thing. "Do you think you're better than us because you're quiet and dark and weird?" Amara stood, towel still in hand. "No," she said softly. "I just don't need to prove who I am by hurting someone else." For a moment, silence filled the locker room. Then Madison's face twisted, half fury, half shame. She snatched a nearby water bottle, unscrewed the cap, and poured it over Amara's bag. "Oops," she sneered. "Guess I'm clumsy." Amara didn't move. She simply stared, that same steady, unsettling gaze. And when she finally spoke, it was almost a whisper. "Careful, Madison. You're starting to drown in your own hate." Madison turned and stormed out. Chloe stayed behind, eyes wide. "She's not worth it, you know," she said softly. Amara nodded. "Neither is fear." By Friday, the tension had reached a breaking point.
Rumors spread that Amara was planning to get revenge.
Some said she was going to fight Madison. Others said she'd reported them. Madison couldn't stand the whispers anymore. She needed control back, needed to prove she still ran things. That afternoon, after the final bell, she and her friends waited in the hallway. The bleach bottle, half full from art class supplies, sat hidden in a backpack. It wasn't meant to be serious, Madison told herself. Just a scare. Just a reminder. Amara walked out of class, binder in hand, unaware.
Ew.
The hallway was nearly empty, sunlight cutting through the windows in pale orange lines. Madison stepped forward, blocking her path. "Still pretending to be brave?" Amara sighed. "Still pretending to matter?" Something snapped inside Madison. With a quick motion, she pulled the bottle out and splashed its contents toward Amara's hair. The sound, a sharp splash, followed by gasps, echoed like thunder. For a split second, Amara froze. The liquid dripped down her braids, staining her shirt. The sharp scent hit her nostrils. Then time slowed. Her breath steadied. Her heartbeat slowed. Everything her sensei ever taught her flooded back. Not the fighting, but the control. She blinked once, twice, and slowly turned her head toward Madison. Madison took a half step back, suddenly realizing this didn't feel like power. It felt like fear. Students nearby had stopped in their tracks. Phones were out again, but this time, no one was laughing. Amara reached up and touched her hair, the same hair her mother had told her was her crown. She looked at her hand, saw the bleach glistening, and then looked back at Madison. Her voice came out low, almost trembling, but not from fear. "You don't know what you just did," Madison stammered. "It's just a joke." "No," Amara interrupted softly. "It's not." The hallway was silent now, the kind of silence that makes the air heavy. Amara took one slow step forward. Madison flinched. "I could hurt you right now," Amara said, her tone even deliberate. "But I won't, because that's the difference between us." Her eyes, calm, fierce, and unwavering, locked onto Madison's. "You break people to feel strong. I build myself to never break." She dropped her soaked binder to the floor and walked away. Not a word, not a tear. just quiet strength. Behind her, Madison's hands trembled. The bleach bottle slipped from her grip, hitting the floor with a hollow clatter that echoed down the empty hall. "Chloe," whispered Mads, "what did you just do?" Madison didn't answer. For the first time, she wasn't sure if she was the one in control or the one about to lose everything. And as Amara disappeared around the corner, every eye that had once mocked her now watched in awe and disbelief. Because the girl they thought they'd broken hadn't fallen apart, she'd just revealed the kind of strength that silence can hold, and the kind of storm that rises quietly before it changes everything. That night, Amara sat alone in her room, the faint hum of the city seeping through the cracked window. The bleach smell still lingered in her hair, no matter how many times she washed it. Her fingers trembled slightly as she tried to braid it again. But every twist reminded her of what they'd taken from her, or at least what they thought they had. The mirror in front of her showed two Amaras. One tired, scarred, humiliated. The other quiet, calm, but burning underneath. Her phone buzzed on the table. Dozens of messages filled the screen. Classmates, strangers, gossip. Some offered pity. Others mocked. One read simply, "Should have stayed quiet." She turned the phone face down. Silence returned. For the first time since the attack, Amara felt the weight of everything press against her chest. She wanted to cry. She wanted to scream. But instead, she just breathed inhale, exhale. Her sensei's voice echoed in her memory, soft but sharp. "When the world pushes you down, the ground isn't your enemy. It's your foundation. Rise from it." Her eyes drifted to the corner of the room where her old karate gi hung, neatly folded, untouched for months. Life had gotten busy, school had grown harder, and she'd convinced herself she didn't need it anymore. But now it called to her like a familiar heartbeat. Amara stood up, crossed the room, and ran her fingers across the fabric. The cotton was worn, the sleeves slightly frayed, but it still carried the scent of discipline, sweat, and peace. She remembered her first real lesson years ago on a rainy afternoon. Sensei Ito had placed her in front of the mirror in the dojo and told her to throw a single punch. She'd done it quickly, impatiently. He shook his head. Again. She did it again. And again, till her arm ached. Finally, she snapped. "Why does it matter how many times? It's just a punch." He'd looked at her reflection beside his own. "Because every time you throw it, you learn whether you are fighting the world or yourself." That memory washed over her now like warm light. Back then, she didn't understand, but tonight she did. She realized Madison wasn't her real opponent. The fight wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming control. Amara slipped into her gi, tied the belt around her waist, and knelt on the floor. The room was small, but in her mind, she was back in the dojo. The sound of wooden floors beneath her knees. The rhythmic creak of the old ceiling fan. The faint rustle of uniforms in motion. She closed her eyes. Inhale. Exhale. She began to move slowly at first. Then with more focus. Each stance, each strike, flowed like water. Her breath matched every motion. The fear, the anger, the humiliation, all of it became fuel, not fire. Outside, the city's noise faded. Inside, only her heartbeat mattered. Hours later, Denise cracked open the door. Baby Amara paused mid-kata. Sweat glistened on her forehead, her breathing steady. She looked stronger, centered. Her mother stepped inside, eyes soft. "You're really doing this again, huh?" Amara smiled faintly. "It's not about fighting them. It's about remembering who I am." Denise nodded. "You were never just a fighter. You were always a builder." Amara stood still for a moment, the truth of those words settling deep in her bones. "I don't want to hurt them, Mom. I just want them to understand." "Then teach them," Denise said. "The best lessons aren't shouted, they're shown." The next day, Amara returned to school. Not with fear this time, but with purpose. She didn't walk faster. She didn't hide. She walked with a stillness that drew attention on its own. The hallways that once felt hostile now felt smaller. She noticed something she hadn't before, the quiet glances of classmates who'd once ignored her. now watching with a mix of guilt and awe. Some of them nodded subtly, almost apologetically. It wasn't forgiveness she was after. It was understanding. In gym class, she asked the coach if she could demonstrate something for the students. Coach Ramirez raised an eyebrow, curious but trusting. When everyone gathered around the mats, Amara stood in the center, barefoot, hair tied back. The same Madison who had once humiliated her stood among the onlookers. Arms crossed, pretending not to care, Amara bowed slightly and began. She moved through a simple kata, the same one Sensei Ito had taught her 2 perfect years ago. Slow, graceful, controlled. Each movement was deliberate, every breath synchronized. It wasn't a fight. It was poetry. No one spoke. Even the whispers died down. When she finished, she stood straight, looking directly at Madison. My sensei once told me that strength isn't about hurting people. It's about protecting peace, even your own. Her voice didn't shake. You tried to take something from me, but you can't steal peace from someone who creates it within themselves. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was heavy. The kind of silence that fills a person with thought. Madison's mouth opened slightly, then closed again. She looked down. Coach Ramirez finally clapped. The rest of the class followed, hesitant at first, then louder. Amara bowed again, not in pride, but in gratitude. She'd found her balance again. That afternoon, as she walked home, a familiar figure waited outside the dojo. Sensei Ito, older now, hair streaked with more gray, leaned against the doorway with his usual calm smile. I heard you've been practicing, he said. Amara chuckled softly. Trying to remember what you taught me, he nodded. You remembered more than you think. She hesitated, Sensei. What do you do when people try to break you over and over? He looked up at the sky for a moment before answering. You let them try. Because in trying, they teach you how strong you really are. Amara smiled faintly. I didn't fight back this time. Good, he said. You won then. That night, Amara sat at her desk, notebook open. The bleach stains on her school binder still hadn't come out. She ran her fingers across them, then wrote on the cover in bold black ink, Control, Peace, Power. 3 words that had shaped her entire life. She didn't need to prove anything to Madison. The victory wasn't in confrontation. It was in clarity. For the first time since the incident, she slept deeply. And in her dreams, she wasn't running from the bleach, the laughter, or the shame. She was standing tall in the dojo, facing her reflection, calm and unshaken. The next morning, something unexpected happened. When Amara entered the school building, Madison was waiting by her locker. No friends, no phone, just her. She looked uncertain, the kind of uncertain that comes when pride and guilt start wrestling inside you. Amara, she said quietly. Amara turned, her expression unreadable. Madison swallowed hard. I'm sorry. I don't even know why I did all that. Everyone expected me to be that person, and I. Amara held up a hand gently. You don't owe me a speech. Madison's eyes watered. I owe you more than that. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Amara nodded slightly. Don't apologize to me with words. Do better. For yourself. Madison nodded, tears threatening to fall. I will. As she walked away, Amara felt a strange mix of relief and compassion. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a beginning. She remembered Sensei Ito's words again. When you master peace, even your enemies become your teachers. And maybe, she thought, Madison had taught her something too, that sometimes the real strength isn't in the fight itself, but in choosing not to fight at all. That evening, Amara trained again. The air was cool, the sunset painting the sky in shades of gold and violet. She moved through her forms slowly, rhythmically, each strike tracing the shape of her healing. Every scar, every moment of humiliation, it no longer felt like pain. It felt like proof. Proof that she could break and still rebuild. Proof that she could lose everything that made her look strong and still be unshakably powerful inside. When she finished, she bowed to the air, not to an opponent, not even to her sensei, but to herself. The girl who'd once cried in silence was gone. The girl who stood before the world now didn't need to fight for respect. She carried it with her. And for the first time since the bleach hit her hair, she smiled a small, steady smile that said, "They didn't destroy me. They revealed me." The days that followed were quieter, but not empty. Something had shifted inside Amara. The air around her felt clearer, her thoughts sharper. The whispers at school faded slowly, replaced by watchful respect. The bullies kept their distance. And Madison, who once strutted through the hallways like she owned them, now moved softly, avoiding eye contact, her laughter subdued. But Amara didn't dwell on that. She wasn't interested in their guilt. Her mind had turned inward, toward growth, toward mastery. Every morning before sunrise, she was awake. The apartment was still, the city beyond her window wrapped in shadow. She'd roll out her mat on the living room floor, barefoot, hair tied back, and begin her routine. Breathe, stretch, move. It started as meditation, its quiet breathing to center her thoughts, then evolved into motion. Her fists sliced the air with precision, each strike echoing softly through the room. Her kicks were measured, controlled, never wild. Her mother would sometimes wake to the sound of soft thuds, step into the hallway, and just watch her daughter focused. "Unbreakable. You remind me of your father when you move like that," Denise said one morning. Leaning on the doorframe, Amara looked up, smiling faintly. "You never talk about him much." Denise exhaled, thoughtful. "He wasn't a fighter like you, but he was strong in his own way. Quiet, strong. The kind that doesn't show off." Amara nodded. "Guess I get that from him," her mother chuckled. "You get the stubbornness from me, though," Amara laughed, light and genuine, the kind of laugh that hadn't escaped her lips since the bleach attack. It felt good. Like air after drowning, on weekends, she returned to the dojo. Sensei Ito was there, sweeping the floor with the same care he used in teaching. The smell of old wood and incense filled the air. "Ah," he said when he saw her. "The storm returns." Amara smiled. "You knew I'd come back." "I didn't know," he replied, setting down the broom. "I hoped." He gestured toward the mat. "Show me what you remember." Amara bowed and began her kata, each movement crisp, each breath timed. She moved with grace, but also something new. Weight, intention. Her strikes weren't about power. They were about purpose. When she finished, Sensei Ito nodded approvingly. "Better, but not yet complete." Amara tilted her head. "What am I missing?" He pointed to his chest. "Your heart is awake, but your spirit still looks backward." "Backward. Toward what was done to you," he said. "You have not let it go. You train to prove you're not broken. But proof is for others. Strength is for yourself." His words hit deep. She thought she had moved past the pain, but in truth, part of her was still fighting the memory of Bleach, the laughter, the eyes that watched her humiliation. Sensei Ito stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Amara, the world will always test you. People will always fear what they don't understand. You cannot control them, but you can choose what stays inside you. Look down." "I'm trying." "I know," he said softly. "That's why you're here." Over the next few weeks, Amara trained harder than she ever had, not out of anger, but devotion. Her mornings became sacred. Her nights, purposeful. Between schoolwork and helping her mother at the salon, she carved out time to rebuild herself. When she practiced, she imagined not her enemies, but her future. She visualized herself strong, unshakable, standing in rooms where others once tried to silence her. She didn't dream of revenge. She dreamed of mastery. One evening, Sensei Ito gathered his small group of students for a lesson. He spoke slowly, as always, his words deliberate. "Many people believe martial arts is about power," he said. "But true mastery begins where anger ends. If you fight to destroy, you've already lost. But if you fight to protect your peace, your dignity, your truth, you become unbreakable." His gaze fell on Amara. "Show them." Amara stepped forward. The other students circled around her. She demonstrated a self-defense form, graceful, confident, When a partner moved to grab her, she redirected his energy with ease. Her movements fluid and effortless. The dojo was silent except for the sound of breath and movement. When the exercise ended, Sensei Ito clapped once. "That," he said, "is strength. Not because she is faster, but because she is calm." After class, one of the younger students, a shy girl named Kiana, approached Amara. "You're really strong," she said, eyes wide. "Were you always like that?" Amara smiled gently. "No. I used to think being strong meant never getting hurt. Now I know it means healing anyway." Kiana nodded slowly, as if she'd just been told a secret meant for her alone. At school, things continued to shift. Teachers noticed Amara's renewed focus. Her grades climbed. She began volunteering to help with self-defense workshops the gym coach was starting for younger students. Madison, to everyone's surprise, showed up one afternoon. She didn't speak, didn't ask to participate. She just stood in the corner, watching. Amara saw her, and for a moment, their eyes met. Madison's expression was unreadable, but not hostile. Just humbled. When the class ended, Madison approached her slowly. "You're teaching now?" Amara wiped sweat from her forehead, nodding. "Trying to help people feel safe." Madison hesitated, then said quietly, "That's good." Amara could tell the words weren't easy for her. "You could join us," she offered. Madison blinked, startled. "Me?" "After everything, everyone starts somewhere," Amara said simply. "Even you." There was no sarcasm, no resentment in her tone. Just honesty. Madison didn't answer right away, but the next week, she showed up again, this time in gym clothes. She stayed at the back, followed along awkwardly. She was clumsy, hesitant, but she tried, and Amara noticed something for the first time. Madison wasn't performing for anyone. She was just learning at home that weekend. Amara and Denise cooked dinner together. Music played softly in the background, old soul records that always made the apartment feel warmer. Her mother glanced at her between chopping vegetables. "You've changed," she said. Amara looked up. "How so?" "You move different. You look people in the eye now, even when they don't deserve it." Amara smiled. "I'm just done shrinking." Denise paused, eyes glistening. "I wish I'd learned that when I was your age." Amara set down the knife and hugged her mother tightly. "You've taught me more than you think." That night, Amara sat by the window, watching the city lights flicker below. Her phone buzzed again, this time with a message from an unknown number. It was Madison. "Thank you for not giving up on yourself. Or me." Amara stared at the screen for a moment, then typed back, "We both had lessons to learn." She set the phone down and smiled. Weeks passed. Her confidence became quiet but radiant. Teachers invited her to speak to younger students about discipline and confidence. Her story began to spread, not as gossip, but as inspiration. Even those who once whispered behind her back now looked to her as an example of grace. And through it all, Amara never bragged. She stayed grounded, because real power, she knew, wasn't loud. It was steady. One evening at the dojo, as she finished her final kata, Sensei Ito approached her again. "You've grown," he said. "Not just in skill, in spirit." Amara bowed. "I feel different, like I'm not carrying the same weight anymore." He nodded. "Good. Because the purpose of pain is not to define you, but to refine you." He turned toward the door, then paused. "Do you know what the most powerful strike in karate is?" Amara thought for a moment. "A punch? A kick?" He smiled faintly. "No, it's the bow." She frowned slightly. "The bow?" "Yes," he said. "Because it shows restraint, respect, the ability to face even your enemy without hate." Amara smiled slowly. "Then I think I finally learned it." That night, as she walked home under the glow of street lights, she thought about everything she'd been through, the cruelty, the humiliation, the quiet strength that followed. She realized that her real victory wasn't that she'd scared her bullies or silenced the whispers. Her real victory was that she'd come through it still herself. She hadn't let hate change her. She hadn't let pain define her. She had turned it all, every drop of bleach, every cruel word, into fuel. And now she was unshakable. Not because she was unhurt, but because she had healed stronger than before. When she reached home, her mother was waiting with a proud smile. "You look lighter," Denise said. Amara nodded. "I think I finally let go." Her mother touched her cheek. "Then you've already won." Amara looked past her to the mirror on the wall, the same mirror that once reflected her tears. Now it showed something new. Strength, peace, purpose. She tied her braid tighter, lifted her chin, and whispered to her reflection, "No one can pour anything on me that washes away who I am." The empowerment was complete. Amara had transformed pain into power, humiliation into humility, and silence into strength. The girl they once mocked was gone. In her place stood a young woman who understood that real warriors don't fight for revenge. They fight for peace. The seasons began to shift. Warm spring light replaced winter's gray, and with it came a new energy at Jefferson High. The Bleach incident was no longer the talk of the school, but its shadow still lingered in quiet ways. People remembered, even if they didn't say it out loud. For Amara, life had settled into rhythm, peaceful, steady. She trained, she studied, she taught. Her mornings started with calm. Her nights ended in gratitude. She no longer avoided the mirror. Instead, she greeted it like an old friend. The scars in her hair, a quiet testament to everything she had survived, but peace has a way of being tested, especially when its hard-earned. It happened on an otherwise ordinary Thursday afternoon. The school auditorium buzzed with excitement. The annual talent showcase. Students crowded in, dressed sharp, phones ready. It was one of those rare days when the entire school came together, united by curiosity and competition. Amara hadn't planned to participate. She was there to support one of her friends from the self-defense club, who was performing a dance routine. She sat halfway up the bleachers, quiet, calm, letting herself blend in. That's when she noticed them, Madison, Chloe, and Brianna, sitting in the front row. Their group looked smaller somehow, the energy between them fractured. Madison's once perfect confidence had dimmed. She kept glancing around almost nervously. When the host called for the next act, a murmur rippled through the crowd. Madison and her crew? Amara blinked in surprise. Madison was performing? The curtains parted. The girls stepped out, dressed in matching outfits, attempting a polished dance routine. It started well, but midway through, something went wrong. Madison missed a step, then another. The crowd began to whisper. Chloe's timing faltered. Brianna froze. By the end, the music cut abruptly, leaving a heavy silence. A few claps scattered across the room, hesitant. Madison's face flushed crimson. She forced a laugh, trying to play it off. But the embarrassment was clear. For a brief second, her eyes darted toward Amara. Their gazes met. And in that glance, Amara saw something she'd never expected to see. Not malice, not arrogance, but fear. The kind of fear that comes from realizing that your own cruelty has isolated you. Madison looked away first after the show. The hallways filled with noise again, laughter, chatter, gossip. Madison stormed out of the auditorium, her friends trailing behind. Amara lingered a moment, then stepped outside into the courtyard, where sunlight filtered through the trees. She took a deep breath, letting the cool air steady her. That's when she heard the voices. "Madison, it's not a big deal," Chloe began. "It is a big deal." Madison snapped. "Everyone saw us mess up." "People mess up, Mads," Brianna said softly. "Maybe if you stopped worrying so much about Madison, cut her off." "Don't lecture me." Amara turned, about to leave them their privacy, but before she could, Madison's voice rose again, sharp and desperate. "This is your fault anyway. Ever since that stupid Bleach thing, everyone looks at me like I'm the villain." Amara froze mid-step. Brianna said quietly, "That's because you were the villain, Mads." The words hung in the air like thunder. Madison's jaw tightened. "You're taking her side now?" "No," Chloe said, sighing. "We're just tired of pretending what we did was okay." Madison's hands balled into fists. You think she's some hero now? You think she's better than us? Amara stepped forward then, her voice calm but cutting through the tension like a blade. I don't think I'm better. I just stopped being worse. The three girls turned, startled. Madison's eyes narrowed. You've been listening? I heard enough. Amara replied. A pause. The kind of silence that feels like a storm about to break. Madison took a step closer, trying to reclaim her old dominance. You think this is over? That you can just walk around like some saint? Everyone still remembers what happened. Amara tilted her head slightly. Yes, they remember what you did. But they also remember how I stood up. Madison flinched. The crowd from the courtyard, students drawn by raised voices, began to gather, murmuring. Phones lifted, the air shifted. Madison's pride flickered into panic. You think you're untouchable now, huh? She spat, her voice trembling. You think you can just make me the bad guy forever? Amara stepped closer, her tone low but steady. I don't need to make you anything. You did that yourself. You think you scare me? Amara didn't move, didn't blink. No, I think you scare yourself. The words hit harder than any punch. Madison lunged, a desperate, reckless move, more out of humiliation than courage. Her arm swung wildly, a slap aimed at Amara's face. But before it could land, Amara moved one smooth motion, instinctive and effortless. She caught Madison's wrist midair. Time seemed to stop. The crowd gasped. Madison froze, her breath quickening. Amara's grip wasn't violent, it was controlled. Calm. Amara leaned in slightly, voice low enough that only Madison could hear. This is what control feels like. It's what you never had. Then, gently, she released her. Madison stumbled back, eyes wide, her entire body trembling. Amara didn't gloat, didn't smirk. She just turned to the crowd and said clearly, "This isn't strength. This is what happens when pain is never faced. Don't become her. Don't become me. Be better." The courtyard went silent. Madison's face crumpled, shame, regret, exhaustion, all breaking through at once. Tears welled in her eyes. "Why didn't you just hit me?" she whispered. Amara looked at her softly. "Because that's what you would have done." Madison's lip quivered. "I'm sorry," Amara nodded. "Then start acting like it." By the next morning, the video was everywhere. Not the Bleach attack, not the cruelty, but the moment. The still image of Amara stopping Madison's strike, calm and steady, became a symbol. People commented not about revenge, but about restraint, about how she'd turned a cycle of hate into something powerful. Even the teachers took notice. The principal called Amara into her office, not to scold her, but to thank her. "You've taught this school more about strength than any assembly ever could," she said. Amara smiled politely. "I didn't mean to teach. I just refused to forget who I am." In the following weeks, something beautiful unfolded. Madison, Chloe, and Brianna began volunteering at the same self-defense workshops Amara taught. The first time Madison showed up, she didn't speak. She just listened. She struggled with the moves, stumbled over stances, but Amara helped her anyway, patient and kind. After class one evening, Madison stayed behind. "I'm still trying to forgive myself," she admitted quietly. Amara nodded. "It'll take time. But it starts with not being that person again." Madison's eyes softened. "Thank you for stopping me. For not giving up on me." Amara smiled faintly. "You stopped yourself, Madison." I just held up the mirror, and months passed. Graduation approached. On the final day of school, Amara stood outside Jefferson High, sunlight spilling over the brick walls. Her hair, still carrying faint streaks of lighter color from the bleach, glimmered gold in the light. It was no longer a scar. It was her crown. As she walked toward the gate, she heard someone call her name, Amara. She turned. Madison jogged up, breathless, holding out a folded piece of paper. "What's this?" Amara asked. Madison smiled nervously. "A letter. The school's launching an anti-bullying mentorship program next year. They want you to lead it, and I asked if I could help." Amara blinked, touched. "You're serious?" Madison nodded. I figured it's time I stop running from who I was and start helping others not become me. Amara smiled, warmth spreading in her chest. That's strength, Madison shrugged, laughing lightly. Guess I learned from the best. They shared a quiet, genuine moment, not as enemies, but as people who had both learned the same lesson, the hard way. That evening, as Amara walked home, she passed by her dojo one last time before heading to college. She found Sensei Ito meditating by the open door, bathed in soft golden light. He opened one eye, smiling faintly. So, justice? Amara chuckled. Not the kind I expected. Good, he said. Real justice is never about balance of pain. It's about the balance of growth. She nodded. Then I think we both won. No, Amara, you taught them how to win. When she reached home, her mother hugged her tightly. You did it, baby. You made them remember your name, not as a victim, but as a voice. Amara looked out the window, the city glowing beneath the twilight. I didn't need them to remember me, she said softly. I just needed to remember myself. And so, the story that began with bleach and cruelty ended with grace and restoration. The girl they tried to humiliate became the symbol of power. Through peace, the bullies who once mocked her learned humility through consequence. And everyone who watched online, at school, at home, learned something even deeper. That real strength isn't loud. It doesn't come from fists or fury. It comes from knowing when to let go and when to stand tall. Amara's story spread far beyond Jefferson High. Videos of her speeches, her self-defense lessons, and her quiet compassion inspired others. She didn't just survive her pain. She transformed it, and every time someone asked her how she stayed so calm, she gave the same answer, because peace is my power. And once you find it, no one can take it away. Justice wasn't revenge. It was transformation. And in that transformation, Amara didn't just win, she rose. The world has a way of circling back, not to repeat the same pain, but to test if you've really learned from it. Months after graduation, the city felt different. The pace, the people, the rhythm, everything seemed to move faster. But for Amara, there was a strange calm at the center of it all. She had learned to carry peace like armor. It didn't make her invincible, but it made her steady. She had enrolled in college, majoring in psychology because she wanted to understand not just why people hurt others, but how to help them heal. The bleach, the bullying, the humiliation, they had all been chapters in her story, but not the whole book. She wasn't the girl who was attacked anymore. She was the woman who rose anyway. Her first day on campus felt surreal. She walked past students rushing to classes, laughter spilling across the quad, backpacks bouncing, coffee cups clutched tight. She smiled at the chaos of it all. For the first time, she didn't feel like she was trying to blend in. She wasn't trying to hide, because she understood now she didn't need to. Her scars had become her symbols. Her pain had become her path. A few weeks into the semester, she got an email from her old principal at Jefferson High. We're launching the mentorship program you helped design. The Rise and Reflect project begins next month. Would you come back to speak at the opening ceremony? Amara reread the message twice, her heart swelling with emotion. She replied simply, yes, I'd be honored. Oh. The day of the event. She stood once again in the same auditorium where she had once been humiliated, whispered about, and recorded for the world's amusement. But this time, the energy was different. The room was filled with students, some she recognized. Most she didn't. Madison was there too, sitting in the front row, volunteering as part of the program's leadership team. The principal introduced Amara as an alumna who turned adversity into advocacy. The applause that followed was genuine, thunderous, and full of respect. When Amara stepped to the microphone, the crowd went silent. She looked out over the faces before her young, curious, uncertain, and began. A year ago, I stood right here, afraid to even lift my head. I thought if I stayed small enough, quiet enough, maybe the world would stop noticing me. But life doesn't work that way. Sometimes the things meant to break you are really here to build you. The crowd leaned in. Even Madison was completely still. When someone poured bleach on my hair, they weren't just trying to ruin how I looked. They were trying to wash away who I was. My color, my pride, my identity. But what they didn't know. She paused, voice steady, eyes glinting with quiet power. Is that bleach doesn't reach the soul. A ripple of emotion ran through the room. See, pain can make you bitter or it can make you better, and that choice is yours. I chose to turn my pain into power. I chose to learn, to grow, to forgive. She smiled faintly, glancing toward Madison. And forgiveness doesn't mean pretending it never happened. It means refusing to let it control you. Madison nodded slowly, eyes glossy with tears. Amara continued. You don't have to fight every battle to prove your worth. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is stand tall, breathe, and walk away. Not because you're weak, but because you've realized your peace is too valuable to lose. She took a deep breath, her voice soft but sure. Your strength isn't in fighting back, it's in standing tall. It's in choosing light, even after someone tried to dim yours. That's what makes you unstoppable. The auditorium erupted in applause. Some stood, others cried quietly. Madison was among the first to rise, clapping until her hands trembled. Amara smiled, not a smile of triumph, but of release. Because this wasn't about revenge anymore. It never had been. It was about freedom. After the event, a small girl approached her, maybe 12 or 13, her hair braided neatly, her eyes wide with admiration. Miss Amara? She asked shyly. Amara knelt to her level. Hi there. My hair got messed up last year. Some girls made fun of me, the girl said quietly. But when I saw your video online, I started wearing it natural again. Amara felt her chest tighten. What's your name? Imani, the girl whispered. Amara smiled warmly. Imani, you are beautiful. Don't ever let the world make you forget that. The girl nodded, smiling back through tears. At that moment, Amara realized something powerful. Her story wasn't just hers anymore. It belonged to every kid who had ever been made to feel less than enough. That night, Amara walked home beneath the city lights. Her phone buzzing with notifications, clips from the speech, messages of gratitude, even invitations to speak at other schools. But she didn't rush to post. Didn't chase the attention. She just stood for a moment under the soft glow of a streetlight. Breathing in the night air, feeling the quiet hum of life around her, she thought about everything, the bleach, the bullies, the fear, the dojo, the forgiveness. And then she smiled, because now, when she remembered it all, she didn't feel pain anymore. She felt purpose. In the distance, thunder rumbled softly, the promise of rain. Amara tilted her head back. Letting the first few drops touch her skin, the rain didn't sting this time. It felt cleansing, peaceful. She whispered to herself, almost like a prayer. They tried to wash me away, but I was never meant to fade. Sometimes life breaks you so it can rebuild you stronger. Sometimes the people who hurt you are just mirrors, showing you what you'll never become. And sometimes the most powerful revenge is peace. Amara didn't win because she fought back. She won because she rose above. She turned pain into purpose, hate into healing, and fear into freedom. And in doing so, she reminded the world that real power doesn't shout, it shines. So if her strength inspired you today, don't just scroll, hit subscribe. Because every story we tell reminds the world that power comes in every shade. The camera fades out on Amara walking down the street. Rain falling gently, her reflection glowing in the puddles. No background music at first, just the soft rhythm of her. Footsteps in rain. Then a slow, soulful instrumental builds. Warm, victorious. Calm. On-screen text fades in. Pain is temporary. Strength is forever. The music swells. Cut to black.